I think the key to running a great road trip is preparation and expectation. There's two different types of road trips that may go out. There's one which is going to be going to another office where the relevant FRs or core leaders that you're sending to the office, or even leaders, the goal is to actually go and learn and get retrained by an office with potentially a better average, or an office that's doing something maybe better than your own office is doing, and you want to really send your leaders out there to learn from best practice. The second type of road trip is one which is going to get high sales volumes. Depending on what division you're actually working in will be dependent on what type of road trip that you're going on, especially when it comes to going and getting high averages. In some of the divisions that I've worked with in the past, we've actually had to go on road trips based on the fact that the clients who we're working with, they wanted customers in one particular area. So it wasn't necessarily our choice, but the choice of the client, and then in turn we had to meet the expectation that they wanted to in those particular areas. In some other instances, it's very much the choice of the owner. I'll often send people on road trips who want to increase averages, or obviously, as I said, like learning from other offices. To focus more on this topic, on the increased averages and the non-office road trips, they're going to be planned in advance. What I'll often find is I will look at a map of the country or any particular areas in the country that I know will be the required demographics to get best averages for the client that I'm working with at the time. And then in turn I'll go about booking those areas, I'll go about the procedures to actually make sure that I've got those areas exclusively to me for that particular time that I want to go there and do it. Then what I'll do is make sure that it's cost effective in terms of travel and cost effective in terms of accommodation. If I know I'm going to get a maximum of, let's say, 50 sales in any one particular area by sending 4 people to it, and I will make X amount of money from those 50 sales, but essentially the accommodation and travel is coming to more than what I'd actually make from the maximum amount of sales that I can produce in that area, then it's not cost effective enough for me to send people to go and do it. Now, I still may do that in many instances if I really want to develop somebody who's maybe at core leadership or crew leadership level, who's maybe not run a road trip before, and in turn they actually want to go and gain some experience from running their own little mini office for a week. But in most instances I'm actually looking at that road trip to see if it's going to be feasible to raise averages, which is going to create momentum, but then in turn if it's feasible enough for me to go and actually make money from. So these are the two things that I consider when I'm sending them out. So I'll then go about either myself or through my administration team to actually book the travel, book the accommodation, and make sure everything's prepared well in advance. So all the maps are going to be produced, and then I'll go about doing a couple of things. If I've specifically got a road trip planned in place, which is going to be for one of my crew leaders or core leaders in order to develop them and then run their own office, as said, then I will go about planning it with them, and I'll go about having little mini expectation meetings and with that particular individual, and I won't announce it to the office as an open road trip, if you like. On the flip side though, if it is a client-based road trip where I know I'm going to have to go in a week's time or 2 weeks' time to a particular area to gain a certain amount of customers, then a couple of weeks in advance as the owner I'm starting to announce that that road trip is there. I'll also announce if we've had a road trip nearby there previously, and what sort of averages and sort of incomes that were made by the FRs that went on that road trip. So I'm almost creating a buzz for that road trip in the future, and a buzz for people to come to me and say, hey, number one, I either want to run it, or number two, I want to be involved and be a part of it. In many instances, if someone's actually going to run the road trip, I'll make sure they've vice-captained a road trip or assisted in running a road trip in the past, so they've seen it be done successfully, and then in turn they're now ready to take on that extra responsibility themselves. If they've not, then I will still, on occasion, if they're more senior and they definitely want to take on that responsibility, I might let them do it, but in most instances it's someone who's actually been on one in the past, and they've obviously seen a successful road trip in the past. In terms of the other people that get involved in the road trip, I'll make sure that one of them is assisting the person that's going to run it, so they can then plan and be prepared for when they do it in the future, because they've seen it already and they've seen it go well. So that's the first kind of way I get the buzz out there. What I'm also doing is making sure that everything is planned well enough in regards to mapping. What I'm also making sure that there's no way that it can fail, in 99% of instances road trips don't have less results than what they would in the own city that people run from, but on the odd occasion it can, and a lot of that comes down through a lack of planning, preparation, and also having the right expectation with people from the start. So I want to make sure that there's nothing that can fall down. I want to make sure that there's I've covered all areas and angles of any potential problems, even to the point where I've got the maps in on Street View and them to see if there is number one, homes in the areas that I'm going to send them to. There's obviously going to be homes, but making sure there's sufficient homes. But secondly, like I said at the start, it's the target demographic that we're really looking for that particular client. So I'm covering all those angles. What I'm making sure that is everyone's fully aware of when the travel times are. I'm also making sure that everyone is aware of the accommodation, even though essentially it's down to the road trip leader to know and guide people to the accommodation and travel. I want to make sure everyone's on the same page so they're aware of what the road trip is. And then what I want to do is sit down with the actual road trip themselves. And this won't be a rush 5 or 10 minutes. This will be a half an hour to an hour meeting, either the day before that they go on the road trip or sometimes on the day of the road trip. What I find is the most successful road trips I've run is generally when the road trip goes out on a Sunday afternoon. So the guys travel down on the Sunday afternoon, they arrive in the relevant accommodation on the Sunday night, and then they wake up on the Monday morning and they're ready to go. I have run road trips in the past where they go midweek. I've had to do this only really for increasing customers for particular clients, or increasing because of clients wanted increased budgets in particular areas, but in most instances I find they're not as effective the one that goes out for the full week. So my first bit of advice to the owners is making sure that you go out for the full week. Planning for going down on the Sunday night. And what I'll do is I'll actually go and meet the guys at the office. I'll give them all the relevant merch that they require. I'm giving them the maps, I'm giving them the accommodation, I'm giving them travel, I'm just giving them everything they need. And then what we do is we sit there for about half an hour, and I go through what's expected from them during that period. What sort of stuff I'm going through? The first thing is the expectation of results. So I'm talking up the average of what I think is capable. I'm also talking about how they plan their day. In many instances, they'll be going into the field at about 10:30 in the morning, and they'll be finishing about 8:30 in the evening too. So for most people, they won't have worked that sort of hour in before. Generally they would have gone in the field in the afternoon and worked into the evening, but they wouldn't have worked that sort of amount of time on the field, or definitely they wouldn't have worked, essentially a 9-10 hour day. So I'm going to walk through them how they actually work that sort of a day. Then what I'll do is actually walk through how the law of averages work a little bit differently. If I know the area I'm going to, which I always will by that point, is I'm going to talk them through as well how it actually works in regards to daytime sales and what they should be on, or what they should be expecting to be on by sector point, and indeed what they should be expecting to be on by the latter part of the day. I'll also talk about the fact that it is a bit of an energy killer pitching for that amount of time, so making sure they're ready for that. Obviously a long break throughout the day, and a slightly shorter break in the evening before they go into evening prime time is always a necessity if you're going to achieve a successful road trip and you're working that sort of hours day to day. I'll also talk about how people react. I'll also mention that maybe some people won't get the best result on day one, day two. Sometimes it does take time for people to adjust. Now, I don't want to bring down their level of expectation, because I want them to go with a high level of expectation, but inevitably maybe 1 or 2, if you're sending a 4 to 6 road trip out, won't necessarily pick it up from the off. It may be different to the territory they pitched already. So I will put that expectation in there. So I want them to be reacting in the right way. I want people to be able to go out the next day with that high level of expectation, the second day result, because they've adjusted from day one. What I'll also do is let them know that I'm going to be doing a conference call with them each evening. What sort of stuff I'm expecting in terms of feedback, and very similar to a day-to-day breakdown. I want them to find out what the positives were for the day, and maybe a couple of challenges that they faced. In many instances, if the road trip's going very well, which it will in most, you won't get too many challenges. You'll just get everybody telling you that it was great, it's fantastic, and they had great results. And that's brilliant. That's very easy to run a conference call if that's the sort of feedback that you're getting. So I really kind of depend on it like for like, when I'm going to do my calls and how frequently I'm going to do my calls based on the results, but also I suppose the length of my calls based on the results too. So if everyone's done very well, I'm starting to challenge people for the next day. So I'm not just talking about kind of bell and gong averages, I'm talking about PBs. I'm talking about the subsequent income they can actually make, and this is done through the pre-expectation and on the conference calls each night when they come back to their relevant accommodation. I'm also talking about how there's a certain level of behaviour required, or a good level of behaviour, I should say, required on a road trip. It's very easy when people are given that autonomy to kind of do whatever they want to do, that some people take that to an extreme. Now, that's not to say that I'm a killjoy and I don't want people to have fun during that period of that week. I definitely am more than happy for people each night when they finish to go and get a bit of food and have a couple of drinks. But there's a certain level of discipline that's required for people on a road trip, and there's a certain level of discipline required each day and reliability when they're getting up at a certain amount of time and making sure that they're in the field by the said time that we put in the expectation at the start, which is generally 10 or 10:30 in the morning. So, I walk them through how that's going to work. I then walk them through towards the latter part of the week and how the conference calls. I generally find the conference calls that I'm running are getting a little bit longer towards the latter part of the week, because essentially energy levels will start to dip as the latter part of the week. So I want to make sure they get maximum result for the latter part of the week. I also then get a general level of unity going with everybody working together in regards to hit the overall goal that we've got. And again, that's dependent on how many people and also where they're going and which client they're working with, but there'll always be an overall goal. What I'll generally do too is incentivize both the high roller and also the person running the sector, the person running the road trip, which I suppose is running the sector almost. But I'll always have that incentive there for the high roller and the person running the road trip, because I want someone really backing it up, and I also want the person who's doing the best to have the opportunity to make a bit of extra money. So I'll always have those two incentives in place there. And then I'm just making sure that everybody's on the same page when it comes to discipline, in regards to if somebody's not maybe getting up on time, or someone is taking it to the extremes when it comes to having some drinks in the evening, that everybody's on the same page with regards to that person doesn't automatically have the autonomy to continue being on the road trip, and then actually be replaced by somebody if they're not showing the relevant ethic that's required in order for that road trip to be successful. So these are all the pre-expectations that I'm doing. I make sure the team that I'm sending strong. I also make sure the person running the road trip is having a separate conversation with me, probably the week before, and I'm just outlining to him how he should be acting. I'm outlining to him how he should be speaking. I may walk that person through certain conversations that he's having with people on the night time and the morning, and also I'll just make sure that this is their chance to shine, because it is. It's their chance to show that they're the person that should be considered to run the next office. It's their chance to show that they're the person that should be considered for any sort of future opportunities or any sort of future responsibilities that I may be given in my office, that in turn I'm looking for somebody to test, or for somebody to run with. And I think, I suppose, to kind of summarize, and there's so much more that could be said, but to summarize, preparation is key, expectations from the people that you're sending there is key, picking the right places to go, and also just making sure in turn that the people who are going on the road trip are going to all work in unison with each other to create the highest level of success. If you're doing those four things together with subsections, as stated in the last 10 minutes, then in turn you'll find that your office and indeed that road trip is more than successful.